Why in the world don't we do battle ropes and calf raises and bicep curls and pec deck? Why don't we do those all the time? We're gonna break it down. Coach Berek here, Equity Podcast, giving you tools to be fit for life. We do some of those movements, and we want to do some of those movements, but they are not the base of what we do. And the reason is the movements that we want to focus on have two things in common. They're measurable and they're functional. Functional movements and measurable movements. And the reason that we want those two things, first with the measurable, we want to be able to see something that is repeatable. We want to be able to measure it and see if we're getting better at it. When you measure something, it improves. So we want to be able to do that. And when something's measurable, we can actually do it again and see if we've gotten better. We can measure our power output. Are we more powerful? We want it to be measurable and functional. We want to make sure we want to lean towards those functional movements that you see in life, in everyday life, or movements that you see in sport, right? Because those are using multiple muscle groups. We're not in isolation. Now, before we break that down a little bit more, that is not to say that we don't do some of these isolation movements, right? Doing the crossover symmetry, doing PT type stuff where you're isolating muscles, doing bodybuilding type stuff. All of those things are really good. Doing battle ropes, doing like the conditioning type stuff. They're all good movements, and we should be doing those, but they're just not our base. That is not the foundation of what we build everything else off of. Battle rope, it's not repeatable. You can't do a set and then do another set and tell how it felt, because there's so much variability in that movement. It's hard to see if it's repeatable, or it's hard to see if it's the same. There's a lot of gray area. That's not to say that it's not beneficial, but it's just something that you cannot compare to yourself for set versus set. It's very difficult to do that. So why? What are we doing? Like what are some of the things that we're trying to? How can we help better define that? So if we're talking about what we're doing in the gym, we're doing constantly varied movements, constantly varied functional movements at a relative high intensity. So constantly varied, we're doing different things. We're doing a bunch of different types of things. We're not doing the same thing on Monday, and then Tuesdays we do this, Wednesdays we do this. It is always different. We are keeping the body guessing. Then we have the functional movements. We'll break that down in a second, right? We talked about that a little bit. And then we want a relative high intensity. It is relative. And different workouts are going to have different intensities. What we want is harder than what you were doing. If you're used to just walking, we're going to try and walk a little bit faster, right? And we just keep leveling up after that. If 10 pounds is heavy, if that's what you're used to doing, we're going to try and go to 12, right? We're just incremental, small, relative intensity, and we're going to build that up over time. So functional movements, right? Like I said before, functional movements are movements that you see in life or in sport. Like the kind of the CrossFit definition of functional movements is a movement that has the ability to move large loads, long distances quickly. And they're also going to be uh, they're going to use multiple muscle groups, right? So instead of like when we do a bicep, right, it's just using the arm, right? It's just the bicep. I mean, there's some little more going on there, but what we might see in a group class is instead of doing bicep curls, we might do chin-ups, right? You're still working that bicep, but we're also hitting the lats, we're hitting the shoulders, we're hitting a lot more musculature than just that bicep. And again, there's nothing wrong with biceps. It's just not going to be our focus movement. That's not going to be our base movement. We're going to lean towards that chin up. When we use multiple muscle groups, we are able to use large loads, and large is relative. I can chin up more than I can bicep curl. I can move through that range of, I can move through a longer range of motion as well, and I can do it quicker. Large loads, long distances, quickly. That is one of the definitions we like to use for functional movements. And like I said, we like these because they're measurable and repeatable. The number of times that I need to pick up a bag of dirt or salt or a seed, and I had to whip it up onto my shoulder, right? That's just like doing a clean. Just like doing the sandbag cleans. And that barbell, it's a little contrived, but it's the same movement, getting it up to the shoulder. Throwing L into the air, right? That's a dumbbell snatch, right? We want to do movements that we're going to see in our life or on the field, on the court. That is going to help us be more athletic. It's going to help us live our lives. When they are measurable, that's going to let us see if we're getting better. If you run a mile and then in another 3 months you run that mile again, if you got faster, well, we've seen improvement. It was measurable. You were going from point A to point B, and you're just seeing how fast you could do it. We want to do that in other objects. When we squat, this is why we focus on ranges of motion and making sure people are getting a consistent range of motion so that we can see how we're doing compared to ourselves. If we squat to a different depth every time we squat, we don't know if we're getting better or not. We're comparing different things, right? If I go to a half squat versus a full squat, those are two different things. If I go to the same distance every time, if I make sure I'm going crease hip below top of the knee, full extension at the top, I know that I can compare those two lifts I can compare those two lifts to each other. And that is why we focus on measurable functional movements. We still want to have some fun. We want to do the bodybuilding stuff. We want to do some physical therapy or like PT, OT type work. We want to do prehab work that is not measurable. We want to do calf raises and tib raises to help build those little muscles in the knee, in the calf, in the ankle, so that we can go run that mile faster. It's not that they're better, it's just that it's different, and our focus is going to be on those measurable ones. When we focus on these, it's going to help us in our life. And then we can add accessories, add some additional pieces on top of that when we find weaknesses, when we need help in those other areas. And then they complement each other. Hope this helps. Find those measurable movements. Keep it measurable, keep it functional. Work towards better. If you think this might help somebody, please share it with them. If you liked it, please like it. We want more happy, healthy people in the world. And every time you share this or like it, it helps reach more people. And we can help create more healthy, healthy people. Thank you so much. Thank you for adding another tool to your toolbox. Cheers.